Hello there and welcome back. This is Total OS Today, total technology for beginners and beyond. First of all, if you celebrate this kind of holiday, happy Thanksgiving. And if you don't, happy holidays anyway. And thank you. This year I'll be finishing up almost 5 years of this Total OS Today technology channel. I started this back in 2010 because at that time I was dissatisfied with the quantity and quality of videos that were not really designed for newbies or beginners to the world of Linux. For me, what I saw was total BS, and from total BS came Total OS Today. So thank you for allowing me to come into your world of technology. All right, well, it's been a while since I've done a comments corner. This is where I comment on some of your comments. I thought I would pick a couple videos. One was a video by a YouTuber by the name of Joe Collins, Linux the Dual Boot Deception. If you haven't already, check out his channel. Some good stuff on there. We'll do some comments on this first, and then we'll finish up on an old video that's a couple years old. That's really outdated. Why Windows users can't switch to Linux, or why some Windows users can't switch to Linux. And I even tried to compare this video to Windows 7. Of course, now we have Windows 10. I thought about deleting this video really, but the comments keep on coming, so I thought I would just leave this outdated video up, really as almost a kind of a forum to express your views, pros and cons on Linux and Windows. All right, first of all, my thoughts and your thoughts really on the video called the Dual Boot Deception when it comes to Linux, installing Linux as a dual boot, something I recommend. But once again, if you haven't already, take a look at the terrific Joe Collins channel here on YouTube. Well, Joe Collins did reply. He says, thanks for the sub. I think you gave a fair assessment from an advanced user's point of view. My work through Easy Linux is aimed at total noobs and novice users. In this video, an article comes from my experiences working with them. All of the solutions you offered to problems stemming from easy one-click setup of a dual boot system, dual boot during install would be a total geek to a novice user. They get lost and frustrated, end up hating Linux for trashing their system. They probably never touch it again. That's why I call it a deception. Joe raises a point here. In the past, I've had to explain that if a newbie is going to try Linux, make sure you have patience and make sure you read the instructions and listen to someone, such as myself or someone else who has experience in doing something like this, because if something goes wrong, it may not be the fault of the operating system, but may be the fault of the user, not intentionally, but perhaps doing something wrong or not reading or listening to instructions clearly. In that situation, that would be, I guess, a deception, because the user would think that the operating system wasn't any good. And I guess the user would be deceived to thinking that the operating system didn't install right, so it's no good, versus, say, the user maybe taking some time to listen and read more of the total, well, I don't want to use any pun, but really reading the total instructions or listening to the total instructions on how to install a Linux distribution as a dual boot. For myself, I have no problem dual booting. I've been doing it since a beginner, 4 years. Pros and cons. And sure, in the beginning I made some mistakes, but once you get past those, dual booting, I believe, is 99.9% safe if you do it properly. And maybe I'll do a video on how to install Linux as a dual boot, and or say you didn't like that Linux OS, how do you safely delete Linux and keep Windows? That's fairly easy too. But that's for a different video. So Joe Collins, thank you for replying to my video. Excuse me. All right. Eric Brunheimer says, I was watching this while installing Linux Mint Mate in an old laptop. Yep, Linux Mint Mate is very good. Orca Flata replies, Mint is the easiest, one of the faster distros to install. Unfortunately, it's not running as spunky as I'd like it to be. I have not had any issues in terms of speed. So I'm running Arch now on all my computers. Okay, well, I will not consider Arch for beginners, but if it works, sure, why not? Joshua Luther. Hello, Joshua. Ironic, I just deleted my Linux Mint partition because I was running out of space on my Windows 7 partition. Plus, I was going to retry updating to Windows 10. I haven't gotten past all the errors trying to update to Windows 10. There's still one I'm trying to work around. But I think the better option is to install Linux on a second hard drive, especially if you're paranoid that you'll mess up your Windows partition. I just used the fix mbr command after booting up into my USB with Windows 7 on it. I actually had to format my old Windows 7 backup USB using my other computer and make a new backup USB. Fixing it is super easy as long as you have the backup disk or USB. Yes, that is super important. If you have a backup of your Windows system, it's going to make it so much easier. Let's see, Joseph Dixit, hello. I agree with Joe's take, Joe Collins. The deception is that it looks easy. Slap in the DVD, click a few options. Sounds like a great compromise, but when something doesn't work, then they blame Ubuntu or whatever distribution. That's true, but I believe nowadays, with the distributions aimed at beginners, such as Linux Mint or Zorin, I believe that dual booting, if you follow the instructions exactly, I believe dual booting is 99% safe. But always back up first, regardless, just in case. Let's see. Everything cool says I have had the clock thing. It's an easy fix. Yeah, there was a mention of the once you go into a dual boot, the clock can go wonky for either Windows or Linux. I guess one of the Arch systems had that. That's kind of strange, but I guess that's the real deal. Yes, Midfinger says regarding the system time, see the Arch Linux wiki. Okay. It's the stuff. Hello, it's the stuff. Buy a second internal disk, install Linux on that. Much safer, probably cheaper. No messing around with moving, resizing partitions. Another disk, certainly an option, but I don't know. I've gotten so used to dual booting over the years. It's just, for me, it's become quite easy. All right, let's do a couple more, then we'll move on to the other video. Garth. Hello, Garth. Toss, I feel partly responsible for this request. I watched this video and commented. I said this is ridiculous. The reasons are in the video there are a lot of untruths, and if you look at the video with Joe's partitioning, it's a complete mess. I think the partitioning was over-exaggerated to prove a point, which isn't true. I then went on to mention that I've been using Arch running alongside long Windows very happily for a year. I still think manual partitioning is best as it's tidy and it's really easy. It's not rocket science. Hold on one second. I would never ever recommend manual partitioning to a newbie, to a beginner. Now once that beginner has been shown how to partition, again, once that beginner has been shown how to custom partition, yes, then it is not rocket science. But again, the person who's never done it before at least has to be shown at least once or twice to get the handle of it. So once again, Joe does make good points in the video. It need not be overly complex or scary, and it need not be a deception. But once again, if the beginner lacks patience and is not given complete instructions, that beginner may think that Ubuntu or Linux Mint or whatever sucks. Therein lies the deception. Okay, one more. Orca Flauta says, Toss, you don't know Joe Collins and Matt Hartley? Yes, Matt Hartley is part of the Linux Action Show. Orca, to be honest, I don't watch the show as much since Brian Lunduk left. He had a personality that was very unique, and I kind of miss it, so I don't really watch the Linux Action Show. I'm sure it's still a good show, but it's just not quite the same. All right, let's go to the comments on the Windows users can't switch to Linux. The Diamond Game says Linus is a quality checker, if you know what I mean. I'm assuming you mean Linus Torvalds, and I'm not sure what you mean, to be quite honest, but thank you for posting. Carola Stradas says, I, as a Windows user, once switched to Ubuntu. It was horrible. Sorry to hear that. I don't blame Linux either way. Unfortunately, I'm just a noob with no Linux experience. Well, Carolis, you've come to the right place. This is a noob channel. That didn't quite sound right. This is a channel designed for noobs. How does that sound? All right. Well, the Diamond Games did respond to Carolis. When did you switch? When I switched to Ubuntu. This sounds like going, I'll take a glass of Ubuntu. Hey. Anyway, when I switched to Ubuntu 2 years ago, it was a mess, mostly because no out-of-the-box GPU support. I struggled for weeks installing drivers, and once I did that, everything was much better than Windows. There are a few things you have to know for programs. First, look in repositories. Yep. And then if you can't, then Google repositories. If no luck, download from official website. You must know the terminal. I'm not so sure that you must know the terminal in the beginning. I've often joked the only terminal I like is the Orlando International Airport. Once you get comfortable with Linux, you should know how to use the terminal. But if you're going to tell a newbie starting off the bat, you must know the terminal now, forget it. Linux is done with that beginner. Let's see. When you get experience, which takes about 6 months of everyday normal usage, I would say that's fair. You can jump onto Fedoras or Debians like me on Arch's boat and continue going deeper. Don't know about Arch, but yeah, give it about 6 months, maybe less, to get comfortable with Linux. Captain Duckman. Hello, Capitan. The fracturing of the Linux community does not just lead to a plethora of distributions, making choosing the appropriate one for your purposes hard. It also leads to an environment where interoperability between programs is hard, often next to impossible. I'm not just talking about the lack of commonality in user interface components and keyboard shortcuts between applications, but not being able to copy and paste. It's a mess of installation systems. Yeah, I think this is where it can get somewhat confusing for the beginner. Where do they start? For me, I got very, very lucky. 10 years ago, in 2005, my first Linux OS was Ubuntu. And even though at the time it really wasn't quite ready for prime time or for beginners, I thought it had a shot, meaning that there was a future for Ubuntu. And today I recommend Ubuntu or any Ubuntu-based distribution such as Xubuntu or Linux Mint or Zorin, because those tend to be easier. But once again, because I had somewhat of a head start on this, it didn't become quite as daunting a task for me to learn. All right, continuing, and to top it off, there's the often extremely hostile response. Inexperienced users or even experienced users with a question with something they've not previously encountered in help forums. So I've talked about this before. Yeah, I mean, look, you're going to have the occasional hostile forum here and there. But that's one of the reasons I created this channel. I have no ego to bruise. I tell you as I see it, both pros and cons, and I believe that every user is a human being, and that human being should be treated as a human being first. People first, technology second. All right, let's see here. Unless those things change and the general desktop experience for the average user, not even talking power user, but mom and pop wanting their Office suite and web browser to work intuitively without having to fiddle with the configuration files all the time, maybe playing Minecraft or another game once in a while becomes fluid and pleasant, and right now it isn't, is never going to attract a massive gathering of regular end users. I've also talked about this before. You walk into your favorite technology or computer shop. Where is a Linux desktop? I believe Google has the resources to create, for lack of a better word, a standard Linux desktop to where everything works out of the box, including gaming. Gaming still falls behind in Linux. I thought this year there would have been somewhat of a major jump for the gaming or the quality of the games in Linux. Sadly, it has not happened, at least Not yet, and especially I read something about the new Steam machines, Steam boxes. They did some testing. And the news is not good. Anyway, let's see what do we have here. Janik Tofgadroli, I think I said it right. Better off blaming the OpenBSD folks. I don't know what's up with that, but okay. Siafu Linux. Hello. I kind of agree and disagree. Linux today is quite easy to use for most people. I think the real reason there's such a small home user base, comparatively speaking, is due to gaming. Well, that's certainly a big chunk of it. I'll be honest, I prefer to do my gaming in Windows, and my Xbox One, I just have less issues. Now, that could certainly change in the future, but for now, I would have to agree. Gaming is a big, big reason why people do not switch. All right, and he says this is slowly changing, but I'll give you a quick example. I introduced Linux to a gaming friend of mine. He loved its speed and didn't have any problem using it, but he couldn't play all the games he bought in the past, so went back to Windows. Okay, so yeah, once again, gaming still has a long way to go in Linux. All right, let's do a couple more. J. Scott Upton, hello. There are similarities to people's attitudes about free markets versus government central planning. We can't just have government do everything, make cell phones, cars, run the hospitals, instead of having all these unorganized people in the private sector doing so many things. There are too many choices. That's what some people think. But they are making two critical mistakes, assuming that the people in government are smarter, better, more enlightened than the private sector. And they are forgetting that it is competition and free choice that improves things. I did respond, interesting comment, and it is. Ultimately, because we are human beings, I believe that freedom has to come first, because it's human nature to be free to choose and do what we want to do with our lives and how we choose to operate our technology. Tom Brennan, hello Tom. Let's see, I think Ubuntu is another good Windows alternative. I like the UI. Ubuntu is terrific, lightweight, very fast, and I do like it also. Let's see here. Joel Martin says, try Ubuntu. It uses XFC, desktop fast, very fast. Yep, it certainly is. Marco Rebhan says LXD is faster, but I prefer XFC for a fast DE, I guess, desktop environment. Yep, XFCE is certainly fast also. Okay, let's do one more. Marcelo Cardenas. Hello, Marcelo Marchello. Since I study computer science, I use Linux a lot for college, but still I don't like it enough to use it as my daily OS. I really don't care about ideologies and software. I just use whatever works for me, and for me Linux works as a tool. But still, I'm not switching from Windows as my main OS for daily things. I did reply what exactly are you having issues with. Of course, if it's for gaming or there are certain programs you have to use that are not available in Linux, that certainly would be valid points. All right, I think I'll leave my responses to these comments. I think I'll stop it here. Thank you for all of your comments. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you once again for almost 5 years of this channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe and help support the channel if you can. If it wasn't for you guys, I would never have lasted almost 5 years doing this. So thank you very, very much. Keep the comments coming. If you have any suggestions or requests, I'll do my best to respond to as many of you as I can. That's it for this one, and you know what I like to say, enjoy your technology. Please don't text and drive. Be safe, happy holidays, and I'll catch you guys later. Take care.